Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with host Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Search for us on your favorite podcast app, or you can find the podcast on jimmyhinton.org and findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so we can spread the word. If you would like to support us and get exclusive rewards, go to patreon.com/speakingout. Find a tier that best fits you and join as a patron of the podcast. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast with hosts Jimmy Hinton
and Jimmy's mom, Clara.
Great to have you tuning into this episode. Thank you, as always, to our patrons who make this podcast happen.
We sure do thank you. Sometimes we don't thank you enough. This podcast goes out to a lot of people, and people are so appreciative of what's shared, and we can do that only with your help. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Well, if you are viewing this in video form, you'll see that we changed the layout of our studio a little bit. Not much, but we just kind of flipped our table, and so now we're sitting beside each other instead of across from each other.
This is so cute, Jimmy.
So
I can see him better. See that?
She can. She's going blind, so
I am. I have my wrong glasses.
So we got to help her out.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the topic for today, this is one that I think shocked Pennsylvanians, and probably a lot of other people haven't heard about this, but I'm just going to jump right in and read the title of this article. Pennsylvania agency bungles ballot referendum for child sex victims. My goodness. Pennsylvania has actively been trying, really for probably decades, but especially since the Pennsylvania grand jury report of 2018 came out, that bombshell report with over 1,000 victims in that report, over 300 priests. Pennsylvania worked really hard, us included,
very much
to get legislation passed to open up a 2-year window looking back so that victims who fall outside of the statute of limitations and can't seek any justice whatsoever would be given opportunity to have a 2-year window, a 2-year look back, to be able to file a lawsuit and name their abuser. And Pennsylvania, of course, did a lot of dirty backdoor deals. Joe Scarnati, who ran the Senate, he was the head of the Senate in Pennsylvania. He ran the clock out, which is kind of a dirty little trick, where they don't vote on a bill that's proposed, and it passed almost unanimously in the House. Right. We were actually there that day.
We were
sitting
there
in the
that
galley.
day, and when I think of all the excitement, the energy, the work, excuse me, that went into this day, I can still hear the chants coming from people say, 2-year window, 2-year window, 2-year window, and the energy was just unbelievable that day.
And, Representative Mark Rossi, who, he's an abuse survivor himself, he was named in the Pennsylvania grand jury report. Mark Rossi fought really hard, Representative Rossi fought really hard on the floor of the House. And, he gets very passionate, he gets very heated, and, at all the right moments, I think. And I thought he gave a very impassioned speech. And I think in large part because of that speech, the House on both sides, it was a bipartisan move where they voted almost unanimously to open up this window, which is, by the way, one of the 4 recommendations of the Pennsylvania grand jury report of 2018. And that's backed by our Attorney General, Josh Shapiro. So Mark Rossi, he gives this really impassioned speech. The House passes it, overwhelmingly passes it, and then it's supposed to go over to the Senate. And the Senate they him-hummed around and, well, they didn't think it was constitutional, which is not up to the Senate to decide. Mm. That is the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania who decides whether a bill is constitutional or not. And so Joe Scarnati was, he kept bringing that up. Well, it's not constitutional, but we're going to vote on it. He kept saying, we're going to vote on it. My vote's going to be a no, but, whatever, we're going to vote on it. Well, he lied through his teeth. Right. And the Catholic Church and insurance agencies were pumping millions and millions and millions of dollars into lobbyists in Harrisburg to block the passage of this bill. And so, anybody who thinks politicians can't be bought off, you're fooling yourself. So, there was a lot of backdoor stuff. Anyway, that it fell flat in 2018, thanks to Joe Scarnati. He retired since then. And I think we have a pretty decent Senate now, pretty decent leadership that I think they would pass a bill.
Right.
Maybe.
Now, as you're
There's
talking,
a better
Jimmy,
chance.
You can almost feel the ceiling drop when that didn't fly completely.
Yeah.
There was such a positive energy, and then it was brought to a screeching halt. And the overwhelming feeling was such disappointment at that. Tiring.
And discouragement.
Very much
survivors had fought for years.
Really, really hard to get to that point, and they were almost at what I'd call the finish line, and then the ceiling fell.
Yeah,
and
even if it was a no vote, at least
it would have gone to vote.
Right,
yes.
They would have had the satisfaction of knowing that the Senate took it up, that it was a fair vote. But there's no such thing as fair in politics.
Well, and
a lot of times.
Say this millions were pumped into lobbyists. That's the whole point. I mean, lobbyists are powerful.
Well, and the politicians get kickbacks from it. It's just a really dirty, corrupt system.
And it's been part of the system for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So, what I want to focus on is how this is by the Associated Press. This article, and I'll link to it in the description. I want you to hear how the Department of State in Pennsylvania, how they framed this. So let me back up a little bit and explain what happened. So this, Joe Scarnati runs the clock out before the Senate breaks for their fall break. And once that happens, when you come back from the break, you have to start all over. You have to start from scratch. So there would have to be a new bill, be proposed in the House, pass the House, go to the Senate, and it just would be rinse repeat.
And Scarnati knew this. So
absolutely.
As you
it
said,
was very intentional.
Stalled and
it was
let
very
the clock
intentional.
run.
He never had any intentions of bringing that to a vote. Recently, Mark Rossi and Representative Mark Rossi and a handful of others, have been fighting really hard behind the scenes. And, there are always a couple different avenues that they try. So what they wanted to do was to put this 2-year window on the ballot in Pennsylvania so that we voters can look at this 2-year window on the ballot, and we voters determine whether that should be brought up in legislation. So it was looking really hopeful. In fact, incredibly hopeful, both in the House and the Senate. I mean, I feel like there was, for the first time in a very long time, there was bipartisan support for this. So then all of a sudden we get this bombshell, 4 days ago, that there was this quote-unquote clerical error. So all of a sudden it's now not going to appear on the ballot. Literally just like that. Which means that the earliest that this could be brought back up and put on the ballot in Pennsylvania is 2023, in 2 years. Right. So now all of a sudden, literally by snapping a finger,
it has been dropped again.
it's dropped for another 2 years. So here's how they describe it in this Associated Press article. A proposed state constitutional amendment allowing lawsuits for otherwise outdated claims was not advertised as required and so cannot appear on the ballot this spring, the Wolf administration disclosed. The Pennsylvania Department of State, in a news release, called it, quote-unquote, simple human error, and apologized, saying the mistake was discovered late last week. As a result, Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar is leaving her job, and both the Inspector General and the legislature will be looking into the matter. So this is a huge deal. They reduce it to a simple human error. We just overlooked it.
And in the headlines of the article, it's a bungle.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of, whoops.
It was a complete bungle.
Messed up here. We kind of overlooked that. Things like that don't get overlooked, as you and I know. That was huge. And
for something where the stakes are so high. I mean, it's not like this was a bill on, say, raising the speed limit or, something silly like that. This thing is huge.
Right.
This is
big.
huge.
It was on people's radar. But the lobbyists were busy at work also.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it's interesting how people's opinions towards something can change. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing the human error here, the human bungle, so to speak, is omission. It is simply omit this and let it rest for a couple of years.
Well, it really... Hopefully an investigation will reveal what really happened, but, there are only two scenarios that I see. One is gross incompetence, which is possible. We've certainly seen it before. Gross incompetence, which in that case, heads should roll.
Right.
Especially on something of this magnitude. The only other scenario is that this was intentional sabotage, where just like Joe Scarnati lied through his teeth, saying that, we're bringing this up for a vote, and then he just ran the clock down, and it never went up for a vote.
And you understand what happens the more time you give something, people
lose energy,
They
lose energy, and all the survivors get discouraged, and
discouragement
they burn
sets
out.
in, absolutely, and then
so they stop fighting.
Throw your hands up in the air and figure, what's the use?
Yeah,
and often that's the ploy.
Right,
it's just simply drag it on and drag it on until there's no energy left.
Yeah. And it's very effective. I mean, I've
is.
seen it. You've seen it with a lot of the survivors.
Sure.
I served for several months with Pennsylvanians United to protect children. That organization eventually just kind of fizzled out because everybody got so tired of fighting for
you're
for
fighting
nothing.
upstream. You're just fighting upstream constantly.
Yeah.
And you're getting knocked down. And when you get knocked down, you get knocked back to 2 more steps. And it's hard to get back up and keep climbing forward. So the easiest, best thing, honestly, sometimes to do is pull out. We see it among advocacy all the time.
Yeah.
Where people just flat out get tired and say, hey, I got to take care of my health. It's time for me to back off. I can't keep doing this. So. Yeah,
I mean it's highly effective. So I don't know. Like I'm not alleging that this was sabotage because I just don't know. But it certainly feels suspicious that this we just forgot that in order to put something on the ballot, we're required to advertise it. How many times have they put things on the ballot? They do it every single time.
Every time
that our ballots come out. There's something there's some item that we vote on the ballot.
And we as voters look for that.
Right.
We're very aware.
So I am highly suspicious that this was just simple human error. It's possible, but I'm really, really suspicious, given the history of this bill and how heated it is and how fierce the opposition to it is.
The fact is, though, apparently this is not going to be on the ballot. So
it's definitely not going to be on the ballot.
So
there's not even a question.
What does that do now to all those who are waiting for this 2-year window?
Well, yeah. So, I think the thing that I really want to focus on for this episode is just how steamrolled survivors of abuse get from every single avenue. And I want to read a post by Rachel Denhollander that she just put up the other day, January 30th. She put this up on Facebook, and it was in response to Rachel Peach. Rachel's an abuse survivor. She tweets a lot, and she's, you'll find her on social media a lot. Fantastic person. She's just wonderful. But she was abused by her youth pastor, and she was one of 3 who pressed charges against him. He finally went to prison a couple years ago, and she put this up just a few days ago. So she tweeted this. 18 years as a youth pastor, 18 years of abusing kids, 7 girls spoke to the police. Let me pause there for a second. God knows how many victims he actually had. Here are 7 who actually were courageous enough to go to the police. 3 of us pressed charges. He pled guilty to 7 felony counts of child sexual assault. And today he's released from prison due to COVID after only serving 2.5 years. And then she puts #MeToo and #ChurchToo. These are the injustices that abuse survivors face every single day, over and over and over and over again. So here was Rachel Denhollander's response. So she posted Rachel's tweet with this commentary. This is why we don't report. Because for every 300 of us who do, only 6 of us will see charges pressed. For every 300 of us who report, only 5 of us will see our abuser put in jail. And for that, quote-unquote, lucky 5, it will take, on average, 3 to 5 years to see it through. For that, quote-unquote, lucky 5, he'll get a sentence less than what he'd get for possession of a controlled substance and will be one of the first considered for early release. You aren't even healed from the horrible trauma of coming forward by the time he's back out anyway. So many don't speak up because our justice system tells them, you aren't worth enough. But I know some of these survivors, and I'm beyond proud of what they did. So, Rachel Denhollander is spot on. Spot on.
To me, this is heartbreaking.
It's unacceptable, too. It's unacceptable.
Heartbreaking. It's just out and out wrong. And I don't know at what point our lawmakers, our general public even, are going to get it as to the trauma that a sexual abuse survivor must live with.
Yeah.
And I think until people get it, this is going to continue.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It is, just as Rachel said, it gives a message that you're not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not,
you don't matter.
You're not worth it. And that is such a horrific message to give.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've heard from countless survivors who have messaged me, emailed me, pleading for help, saying, "Can you help me? Like, I'm in the process of reporting." Well, of course, we're only one person.
Right.
We can't fight the justice system. If attorneys can't fight the justice system, we certainly can't. If Pennsylvanians United to Protect Children, an organization, can't fight the powerful lobbyists and the rich Catholic Church and the lawmakers who are corrupt, if we can't do it, individually, it's an impossibility.
It is.
So, I'm pretty honest with people, and I'm like, realistically speaking, like I will support you. I will encourage you. I'll help you make a report. But beyond that, like,
Chances
let me tell you
are,
realistically
right,
what's going to happen.
realistically gets filed
Because I don't
away.
want their hopes
Right.
to be up and
I
be like,
know.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to report this, and next thing my abuser is going to be in prison, and it's going to be a slam dunk.
And we
It
don't
doesn't
want
work
to
that
give a
way.
message of discouragement, but the truth
No, I
is,
always encourage people to
right,
report.
We have to, and I think unless we flood the system with the truth of these reports, that things will continue as they are. Just
Yeah.
get buried under everything, and the message is left. This doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not worthy of our time.
Not just that this doesn't matter, but
And
you don't matter.
And you don't matter.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think this is a huge deal, and I hope it gets more publicity. I feel like there were a couple articles that just kind of, I almost didn't see it. Mike McDonald put a post up about it, and I just happened to see it on Facebook.
As
And Sean Doherty.
Pennsylvanians, Jimmy, we have a responsibility, I feel, to write our lawmakers, to voice our opinion, to say how disappointed we are with this, to that energy that we had back in 2018 needs to be revitalized again.
Yeah.
And we need to get, moving forward so this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
This bungle does not happen
Yeah.
again. And for others in other states, get your stuff together and make sure something like this doesn't happen in your state.
Well, it just begs the question. I mean, if we look at New York, all right, I'll get a little bit political for a second.
That's scary.
I know, and I'm not
I know
taking
what
sides.
you're
I could
saying.
care
I know.
less
Yeah.
how you're registered. That doesn't matter to me. But you look at what happened in the state of New York with, Governor Cuomo being under fire right now, and rightfully so, for lying and hiding statistics and blatantly giving misinformation about all the COVID stuff, the COVID deaths in nursing homes particularly. You have massive amounts of corruption in that state. I mean, that's just... I think there's going to be a lot probably that comes out and should come out. But then you look at what that state that's so corrupt and so foolish in the way they govern in certain areas, when their 2-year window came up, like, it just zoomed right through. They passed it, and this was like a huge celebration for survivors of sexual abuse because New York got it right.
They did.
With everything that they screw up, they got it right on justice for survivors. So it just makes you wonder, is Pennsylvania really this incompetent, or is it that corrupt? And I lean hard towards corruption.
I think
because we've seen it firsthand.
The roots of the Catholic Church. We have planted here so much history of abuse. This has been a focal point internationally since all this report came out. And so what happens here can unfold in other states very rapidly. And so our legislators are quite aware of that.
Yeah.
So I have to feel that they are very calculated in what they want to see done. The lobbyists are very calculated.
Well, I think it's more the lobbyists at this point, because I
put
do,
it that way. The lobbyists,
to their credit,
Yes,
I
the
think
lobbyists.
our representatives, they
did
did a good job this time around.
We have some great representatives.
Yeah.
We do on this issue. We do.
But it's one of those things.
We need to get fired up again. We need to stir and rekindle the fire.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
And not let this happen again.
Yeah. In my mind, it just begs the question: what's going to happen next? When this is rekindled, when it's brought back up, and Mark Rossi, he's not going to let this go.
No, thankfully,
he will not let it go.
Thankfully,
he's been great throughout this whole process.
He is,
and there are a bunch of them, but.
What's worrisome too, Jimmy, is stated in this article, what Rachel and the other young lady,
Rachel,
yeah, about the offender being released early due to COVID, we are now being flooded with sexual offenders being
Yeah.
released due to COVID,
Yep.
which will have an impact eventually on sentences for offenders
Yeah.
because, it'll have an overall impact. And that's, to me, is as frightening as anything, that
Well,
there's early release.
I remember doing I did a training for a police department up in Cambria County a couple years ago, and I remember Cambria County's district attorney, then, she's no longer, but she told me, like, you have no idea, like, how rapidly and secretively the laws are changing in Pennsylvania, where it's making our job to pursue criminal charges against pedophiles. It's becoming an impossibility now. And I mean, that was 2 years ago. So,
Wow.
We're taking 35 steps backwards. And so, in my mind, the least that we can do is past this 2-year window, at least give some justice to people who've already been abused. It's not like this is speculation, or like this is hypothetical. Like, these are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of survivors who've already been severely abused.
In some ways, I think what's happening is the word pedophile is being very watered down, is going to be blended into this whole mix of transgender and the whole mix of what we're seeing now with sexual identity. And you and I have read enough to know.
I mean, the big move now is the MAPS, minor attracted persons.
Right.
And there's so much sympathy being garnered for minor attracted persons.
My mind is just, I can't wrap my mind around what is being given to us as acceptable now. And I'll have to say that we are being fed by the cupfuls all of this information that's saying accept this, accept this, accept this. And when that gets accepted as legally true, what's that going to do to the whole world of, abuse? It's going to change the identity of a pedophile.
I think it will. I mean, I think
anyway.
it will take a long time before pedophilia is ever going to be widely accepted.
I hope so.
But at the same time, I think we need to be aware that there are people chipping away at this notion that it's intentional, that
but
that it's common, that pedophiles are serial abusers. Those ideas are being chipped away little by little, and that, in my mind, that's kind of going to pave the way for people to come out and say, well, this is just a sexual orientation. And as long as somebody self-reports that they're not abusing children, our compassion should side with them and believe them that they're not actually abusing children. And it's impossible to know that. And
I think that's the direction, sadly, things are going. I mean, it started back in the 40s, if I'm reading correctly. This chipping away is not something new. It started way back when. It has taken a long time to get the ball rolling, but the ball it's starting to have movement now.
Yeah, I think we need to be aware. Yes. And, if we're going to make a point, I think the point is this, that we cannot afford to fall asleep.
Amen.
We need to be aware when things like this happen, what just happened in Pennsylvania, it is unacceptable in every aspect of that word. I mean,
we need to make noise. We can't sit quiet.
This was not just
we need to make noise,
they can't brush
Jenny.
this off. It just was a clerical mistake.
No.
This is huge. The implications of this 2-year window not being on the ballot in May is massive on a wide scale. This affects tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people in Pennsylvania. It's unacceptable. It's not okay, and we need to make noise. We need to call the governor's office and demand action.
And we'd like
and
to hear
say,
your feedback. What ideas do you have? How do we make this tidal wave happen again? We had a good number of tidal waves happening about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And if you've noticed, the sea has become calm now. There's no more big tidal waves going
Not
on.
only that, I mean, this is just a soapbox of mine, but the number of advocates who I've seen stop talking about sexual abuse, who specialized in sexual abuse, they stopped talking about it altogether, and it was all things Donald Trump, and mostly it was about Donald Trump, which I'm not a very big fan of him. I'll just put that out there. But my goodness, like 95% of advocates' posts that I've seen over the last year has had zip to do with sexual abuse of minor children, and their focus completely shifted to this political anger at somebody who they're never going to shake hands with. They're never going to meet the guy in their life, and they've spent so much energy.
Yeah, it's a hatred, I think, that people got sucked into, and it's such a shame. We need to get back. I think people veered off the road. We need to get back on the road again.
I mean, refocus on sexual abuse, because I feel like the Me Too movement has lost a lot of steam, just because people's focus has shifted away from it. And so things like this are happening. And I mean, a year ago, this would have been national news.
I know, would have been all over the place.
And now it's like, I happened to catch it because, a friend, an advocate of mine, a friend of mine and an advocate and an abuse survivor posted it. I wouldn't have seen it otherwise, because it's just not. It was like
just another story.
Yeah.
Hidden in the pages of news.
I think you're right. I think we need to get that energy back.
Right.
People need to refocus. I still see people posting obsessively about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not our president anymore. He is out of office. Time to refocus on abuse. There are real kids being abused out there in mass, and we need to rescue them. We need to fight for them. We need to tell them that they're worth fighting for.
Yes.
Refocus, retool.
Let's make 2021 a year of change. We need to get back on the road again and really ramp things up.
Yeah, absolutely. So our truth bomb is to focus on abuse. Step in and speak on behalf of people and seek justice. Let these victims and survivors know that
they are worthy.
They are worthy.
Yes.
Yeah, they are worth your time and attention. But thank you for tuning in to this episode, and we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker and search for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. If you believe in what we do, consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron, and check out the cool rewards our patrons receive. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.